Dan Persons here. I started the Hour of the Wolf reviews as an experiment that would allow me to drill down a little more in depth on the films I was critiquing than I could do on the Hour of the Wolf radio show. And for me, it worked. I liked having some extra time to stretch out and fill in some points I was making in the original review. I hope it worked for you as well. Unfortunately, doing that takes extra time, and it's extra time I don't presently have. So I'm backing off of the original format and will probably keep posting the reviews as they aired without any elaboration. But you'll at least have a place to find those segments if you want to listen again. I want to thank you for joining me in this little film criticism laboratory, and keep in mind that Hour of the Wolf is still around and still going strong. If you love science fiction, fantasy, enchantment, and the imagination, join Jim Freund most every Monday evening at 9 p.m. ET on WBAI 99.5 FM in New York, and streaming at WBAI.org and on TuneIn. And here comes this week's review on Don't Worry, Darling. Hour of the Wolf review, air date November 21st, 2022. Don't worry, darling. Take one. I'm Dan Persons, and this is my Hour of the Wolf review. The new film, Don't Worry, Darling, arrived in theaters and now on HBO and also at HBO Max with a ton of baggage. There were rumors of on-set friction between the cast and the film's director, Olivia Wilde, which spilled out into the public with arguments over whether actor Shia LaBeouf was fired or quit the project. There were questions about why star Florence Pugh was refusing to promote the film, of whether star Harry Styles spat on co-star Chris Pine during a screening at the Venice Film Festival. That turned out happily to not be true, of Wilde being served with divorce papers during a presentation. And then there was the lackluster reception to the film itself. And it was that latter point that interested me, because I had to wonder whether all the mishigas that attached itself to the film had irreparably skewed people's opinions. So I had to see for myself. So, given the audience I'm talking to here, you've probably heard this one before. Alice, played by Pugh, lives in a desert-bound, creepily idyllic community that seems stuck in a hyperbolic recreation of the 1950s. Her every whim is catered for, so long as those whims include the latest in 50s-style fashion and activities that emphasize women's subservience to men, and she and her husband Jack, played by Harry Styles, engage in passionate, almost perpetual sex. Every morning, Jack drives off with the other men of the neighborhood to work at the Victory Project, a mysterious operation run by the community's quasi-cult leader and sole employer, Frank, played by Chris Pine. And if you're suspecting that all is not as it seems, well, like I said, we've all been here before. It appears director Wilde fell into the trap that otherwise non-genre filmmakers occasionally find themselves in, thinking they've come up with a fresh and daring take on a subject that's actually been explored quite in depth in a number of films. But Don't Worry, Darling isn't quite the disaster I was led to believe. Wilde manages to wring a good deal of eeriness out of existing locations. The performances are consistently good. Whatever issues Pugh had with Wilde, they don't show up on the screen. And while the whole high-concept women being objectified subtext has been explored elsewhere, Wilde does bring an interesting skew to it in the exploration of how men will convince themselves that their indulgence in self-interest is actually some kind of altruism. Not all the beats jibe with what we eventually learn about what Alice is trapped in. Among others, there's a weird sequence where Jack, having received a promotion, is forced by Frank to dance himself to exhaustion. It doesn't make much sense once you understand what's going on. But if Don't Worry Darling is an occasionally awkward exploration of previously covered territory, it's also a compelling watch in itself, one that does focus on issues that, face it, we still need to confront. And that made it worth my time. For Hour of the Wolf, I'm Dan Persons.